Hello there, my name is Paul Mott, and this is going to be the first public demo of a new application called Copy Monster. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you tuning in. So Copy Monster is something that I've been working on for the past few months, and it's based on some ideas that I've had um, about some tools that should make life easier for those people who are managing and producing master data. And basically what Copy Monster does is it deals with tables of data. So it throws around tables of data like files, and you can imagine that there's lots of different types of tables and lots of different instances of tables. Typically people might be using spreadsheets or custom built databases, but Copy Monster is kind of super flexible in that it can handle any type of table right out of the bat, and it can be accessed via the cloud. So we're going to give a little demonstration right now about some of the basic concepts of Copy Monster, walk through the basic ideas, and then we're going to actually import some data and show Copy Monster in action. So you can actually go to our website right now. It's running on Azure website, copymonster.azurewebsites.net. And if you go there right now, you'll find that we have some information written up here about some of the basic features that you can look at. The basic idea of monetizing Copy Monster would be to offer it as a subscription service, and the amount you pay per month would be based on how much storage you're using and how many people are using it. So it's really just based on how much benefit it's providing. And as far as the dollar amount goes, we haven't quite got that settled yet. We need to do some more exploration as to what the actual value of the service is. But it's something that an individual should be able to go in and start using very quickly and very easily. We've tried to make it, simple and beautiful, without a lot of complexity, and very intuitive. There's some information here you can read about how the system works. We've done some documentation. And our goal is that this would be so easy that anybody could sit down and just start using it effectively right away. All right, so given that brief overview, let's jump right into how does this thing work? What does it do? So there's a bunch of different screens here. And if I want to access any of the information, the first thing I'm going to need to do is sign in. So Copy Monster uses Azure AD for its authentication. So in order to use this application, you'll need to have an Azure AD account, and you will authorize Copy Monster to access the users in your organization so that they can log on. Once that sign up is done, then you can sign in here, and you sign in with your Active Directory credentials. I have mine at crystalworks.com, so I'm going to use that to sign in. And now I'm logged in to my tenancy in Copy Monster. Copy Monster is a multi-tenant application. It's designed to be highly scalable, and it should be able to handle many, many terabytes of data and thousands of customers without any issues as it scales up. That's been the plan all along. Now, what we're looking at right now is an empty database. I completely blew this away before I started the demo, and we're looking at the dashboard. There's a lot of information here which I will explain as the demo progresses, but I just want you to see here that it's a bunch of zeros because we're really starting off with an empty system. Now the main thing that Copy Monster is going to do is it's going to work with tables. So there's a little bit of setup involved. In order to work with tables, it needs to know what do those tables look like. So we're going to have something here called a table type. This is just like a data type, and really it's essentially just a description of what are the columns in this table. So I can create a new table type from scratch right now by just typing in some column names, giving this thing this type a name, and then maybe even indicating which one of the columns contains the primary key value. I'll create that new table type, and that's it. I now have a table type called test, So anytime I have one of these particular tables that has these 4 columns, Copy Monster understands it. And there's a little bit more information I can provide. For a particular column, I could go ahead and say that this is actually something else that should be displayed as the header when this thing is displayed in a table. What is the data type? You know, maybe it's something else completely. Now there's another button here called Edit Rules, which leads to another page where I would set up validation rules, and I'll be showing that later in the demo, so I'm going to leave that blank for now. But I'll just save that. And that's it. I now have a table type. Now, generally speaking, you won't be creating these table types by hand. I just wanted to illustrate, you know, what a simple concept it is. Typically, though, these will be table types will be created automatically for you when data is being imported through either an SAP or an Excel gateway. So you won't have to actually do this. Now, obviously, most real-world tables have lots and lots of columns, and we need to have some way to show subsets of them, so we have table views. And this is very similar to anything else you've ever seen, where you start off with the table type, test, in this case is the only one we have available, and you say, well, which columns do you want to display? So here's the 4 columns that are available, and if I want to just show them all, I'll just create a new view called Everything. And looking at this view, it just shows the 4 columns, the order that they should be displayed in, the display number, or the display name. Now, for example, if I wanted to change the order, if I wanted column 3 to come at the end, I can just go down here and rearrange this list and update that. And now column 3 is down here at the bottom. If I edit one of these columns, I can see that there is the display name, which was in this case picked up from the underlying table type. There's an input type, which is what type of edit field should there be, what kind of field should be used when it's being edited. So it might be read-only, which means you can't edit it. In this view, you can't edit this column. Or it could just be a text box that you type into, or it could be a checkbox that you click, or select, which is a drop-down list. In the case of the drop-down list, we would be using these last 4 columns to specify the source of the data for the drop-down list. So it could just be an explicit list of items that you put in there hard-coded. Or it could be derived, the contents of the list can be, can be done dynamically by saying, well, go to this Copy Monster table and this column in that table, and just pull out all the distinct values and use that for your drop-down list. And that could also be filtered as well, so that you can have a context-sensitive drop-down list. These other fields here, format would allow you to put in currency symbols or control the decimal points, those type of operations when it's being displayed. The width of the column, you could fix it to be, say, 100 pixels or 200 pixels, or if you just leave it at 0, all the grids will always just float and automatically adjust. You don't need to worry about it. So that's one of the things you can do to a view, or some of the things you can do to a view. Next thing we're going to look at here is something called a table copier. And a table copier is used to transform or move data. So, you know, in the world of Copy Monster, we imagine that people will be taking tables and cutting out certain rows and creating separate tables and appending and merging and moving tables around and transforming from one type to another. And all of those operations will be handled by a table copier. So a table copier is associated with the table type, which is the destination, the table we're trying to occupy with data. And the source of that could be the same table type or a different table type. We're going to give it a name. So I'm going to create a direct copier here where it just goes from the source to the destination, same type, no transformation. Duplicate each row how many times is used for row expansion. So if you had a particular row item, a product that you wanted to expand to multiple colors or multiple variants, here you could say, well, take this one, each row from the input and recreate it 4 times, 5 times, whatever you need. We're going to leave it 1 for a direct copy. Create the new copier there. if we look at this table copier, you can see that because it's direct, it's just saying, you know, for the output of column 4, just go to the input and grab the value of column 4. So we use this kind of notation to indicate, you know, which one of the input columns you want to use as the output. This is basically a mapping. And then the prepend is you can put text in front of the output or in back of the output with the append. That can actually be a comma delimited list. So you could have something like red, blue, green. And then if you had the row multiplier set to 3, it would duplicate each of the rows 3 times and put this prefix in front of each one of the column 4 values. Start and length has to do with extracting substrings. So you might say go to the start at the 4th character and give me the next 10 characters. That just is a substring extractor. You can actually do expressions here and you replace with. It doesn't have to be just a direct mapping. You could say, I need you to do some math, or I need you to actually combine with some other column. So as long as this is some kind of a valid expression, and these are, you know, like in this case, they're numerical types or string types that can be sensibly added together, then this kind of a transformation is perfectly legal. You can have this type of expression, no problem, in the copier. Okay, so that's table types, table views, table copiers. And basically, those 3 things are telling CopyMonster what does this table look like, you know, and the table view is telling me, well, how can I partition it vertically so that I can only look at stripes of it, slices. And then the copier is something that can be used to slice it up horizontally. You know, how can I extract certain rows and combine certain rows and operate on the tables in a horizontal fashion. So between these 3 things here, CopyMonster lets you manipulate tables pretty effectively. Now, the next thing we're going to look at here on the setup is team members. So the interface we're using right now, where I'm doing all this setup, that's almost like an administrator or a data steward who's using CopyMonster at this level. But many of the people in your organization who are contributors of the data, who you need to validate and to enter new data and to submit data, well, they don't certainly need access to all of this stuff for setting up table types and whatnot. They just need a real simple interface where they can go in and edit the data. And so CopyMonster uses something called a team editor for those people who are just contributors, and we just want them to look at the data and edit it. And those people will be using the team editor, but they need to first be listed as team members. So we're not just going to let anybody look at that data. They have to be authorized to look at the data. And CopyMonster maintains its own list of users or team members. And that's because, you know, you can't really depend on your own company's Active Directory, because maybe you're dealing with the supplier or collaborator or someone else who's not in the same domain as you. You know, you're the administrator of this data. You'd like to have complete control, so you can give it to anybody, you can take it away from anybody, you can add and subtract, and CopyMonster just tries to make it as easy as possible for you to maintain this list of users. So I'm going to go ahead and create a team member for myself, which is different than the fact that I'm signed in with my AD credentials. Here I'm creating team credentials, and I'm going to go ahead and give myself a password that I can remember. And I'm going to leave this unchecked because this is for a later demo. This would be the checking the Excel user would give me the credentials to operate the Excel gateway, which is going to be in another demo. So I'll leave that blank for now. Add a new user. I'm going to add one more new user here called Pam Purchasing. And we'll give that the username Purchasing and another password. And So the idea would be that, I'm the data steward here. I create these accounts and I actually write this down on a piece of paper or whatever, the username and the password, and I literally hand it to Pam so that she has these credentials. And when I send her a link to do some work on Copy Monster, she'll be able to use these credentials to log in with. And this can be as many team members as you need. All right, so folders is the last concept we need to think about here, and that is where we're going to store these tables. Copy Monster is going to always keep all of the tables organized in folders. And there's always a default folder, but if I want to create a new folder, for example, SAP products, I'll just type that in and create a new folder, and I can have as many as I want by just typing in names and creating them. Now, you'll notice the access control list here says all team members, which is what happens by default. But if I edit this folder, I can say, well, really, I just want Paul Mott to be a user. And if I save that, what that means now is that only Paul Mott can see data that's stored in this folder. No one else can. If I change this again to say Pam, I'll add her as well. Now it's Paul and Pam can see it, but no one else. And you just have your explicit list of who can see it. Now within this list, I could say, well, Pam can certainly see it, but she can't change it. So we'll say it's read only and she can't change anything. Or we could say that she can change it, but if she does change something, I want you to log it. I want you to keep an audit trail of everything she does to data that's in this folder so we can log it. In fact, I'm going to leave that turned on. And I'll do the same for myself here. I want to log all the edits that I might make when I'm working on data that's stored in the SAP products folder. Okay, that's it for the basic concepts. And that's all you really need to understand about setting this thing up. And I hope hopefully it's very easy to understand. That's our goal. Now we're ready to actually bring in some data and show Copy Monster in action. So to do that, I am going to use the SAP Gateway interface. And basically, the SAP Gateway is an OData service. And to use it, you have to have a username and a password. So I have a username and a password from SAP's demonstration system. And one of the things that you can get from an SAP Gateway is something called a metadata URL. And what this does is it brings back a description of all of the underlying data types that are behind this gateway. Well, Copy Monster can use that information to construct table types. So we're going to go ahead and import those table types. It just takes a moment to bring that information in, parse it, and here we have a bunch of table types that were just created. So gosh, there's quite a few behind that. We can scroll through them. There's test, the one that we created earlier in the demo, but there's lots of them here. So here's a sales order line item. You can see all of the different columns in it. The one that we're going to look at in the demo here that we're really interested in is the product, the GW demo.product. So here we have a bunch of different columns, and we can see that from the metadata we were able to get the name of the column, the labels, the data types, and of course the rules are left empty right now. And that's great because now Copy Monster has everything it needs to know about this SAP data, and we can actually go ahead and import some of it. So again, I need to put in my credentials, and this time I'm going to put in a URL that retrieves data. In this case, I want to get the product collection. Now I've got to put it somewhere, so I'm going to put it into a new table called SAP Products, and I'm going to store it in my folder called SAP Products. So now I'm ready to import that data, and Copy Monster will go off and retrieve it from the OData service, and it will create an elastic database to store it, and now the data is in the cloud, it's in Copy Monster, and we have it, just that easy. And Copy Monster knows everything it needs to know about this data. It's got the data types, so the sorting works. I could actually go in and edit this right now and change anything I wanted to. If I did make those edits, the edits are being saved in the Copy Monster database. The Copy Monster has. The view, though, that we're using is something called everything. Now, that, the problem with this is it's very wide. There's a lot of columns. It's kind of hard to work with this, and there's just too much information. Well, we're using a view that's showing all the columns, and that view was created for us automatically when this data was imported. But what I'd like to do is go back and create a couple of different views. So let me go to my table views setup here, and I'm going to go to my table type of product. And let's suppose that I wanted to create a view for someone who's only interested in purchasing type data. So in that case, I can go ahead and just start getting rid of some of this stuff that doesn't make sense to me, and I don't really need to see it as a purchasing person. In fact, I can just edit that list and come up with something like this, which I can copy and paste in there real fast. And we'll create a new view called purchasing. So that's just a list of columns that I think is important for purchasing. Let's do the same thing again for shipping. And I have a list of columns here, which kind of makes sense for shipping. And we'll create that new view. And that's all I did, was just put in the list of columns that I want. And I'll go back to my tables and look in my SAP products. And there we have SAP products. There we go. And now I can see my everything view that we started with, but I also have my purchasing view, which is just a few things for purchasing, and then my shipping view. I can switch back and forth. Awesome. Okay, now if I wanted to edit one of these things, again, it lights up every single row for editing. And maybe the case is that I don't want to have all of these rows being edited. That's not exactly what I want. And also, maybe it's the case that if I'm looking here at, say, the purchasing view, and I'm editing the supplier, I don't want to have to type anything here. I want to have a drop-down list, let's say. Well, we can actually go back and do some more work on these views and make them more useful for us by tagging some of the columns as being read-only and some of them as having drop-down lists. Now, I could go through and edit all of these things, but it's kind of time-consuming to do that. And after I was done editing, I could actually download a description of this view as an XML file and save it. Well, I actually already did that earlier, so what I'm going to do is just go back here and delete these ones that I kind of created quickly by just putting in the list of column names. And I'm going to recreate them, purchasing, for example. And this time I'm going to paste in my XML snippet that I had saved earlier. And we'll create that view, purchasing. Okay, now we can see that we have some formats, some widths. Some of these columns are marked read-only. Some of them have drop-down lists. In the case of the drop-down lists, we're saying to get the value of this list, just go to yourself, self-reflect, go to your own table and look for all the distinct values in the quantity unit column, and that's what should be displayed. If I wanted to have an explicit list, I could put this in there as well. In fact, I think that I left that in there because this overrides the dynamic list. And that's it for that view. I'm going to go back and do one more here for the shipping. And again, I have an XML snippet that I had saved previously. Okay. And let's take a look at that one. And here we go again. It has some drop downs and it has some stuff marked read only and some more formatting statements. So let's go back one more time and look at the table. And now we see that shipping is looking a little bit nicer. If I try and edit one of those rows, let's try this one here. You can see that these are all read-only because I don't want those changed. On these other ones here, I have drop-down lists. Same thing if I go to, cancel that, go to purchasing, try and edit one of these rows, and let's actually go ahead and edit this. Let's say that this is going to be a different value altogether. So I'll save that. Okay. And now when I save that value, it was saved back to the Copy Monster database immediately. There is no intermediate copy being kept in my browser. It's just like an old client-server architecture where when you make a change here, it goes right back to the master database and the server immediately. Now, you know, I can do some more interesting things with this screen here as a Copy Monster administrator. Let's suppose that I needed to cut some of this data out. So what I'm going to do is put in a filter here. Say, look for a product category equal to, let's say, notebooks. Okay. Find all the things that are equal to notebooks. Okay. And here we go. We have a bunch of things that are just of the notebook category. So what I'd like to do is copy that into a separate table. So I'm going to put it in the SAP products folder, and I'm going to call it SAP notebooks. And I'm going to use a copier called SAP products. And this is a direct copier, one-to-one, that was created for me automatically by the SAP Gateway Import Service. So I'll just copy that table. And that's it. We actually have a separate table now. And if I go back and look at my tables here, here I have the original SAP products, and here I have the SAP notebooks as a separate table. So now maybe I just take this one table and want to pass it around for editing or have people work on it. And you'll notice that you know, the entire table went, not just the portion of the view that we were looking at. It's the whole all of the columns, I should say. All right, so going back to, let's go back to the big table here, and let's look at our purchasing view. And we have a couple of things up here to look at. One is the team editor. So if you look at the bottom left of the screen here where the link is, you'll see that, in fact, I'll just go ahead and click on this. The team editor is going to lead us to this same table with this view, only in the team editor. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so it wants me to log in, and this time I'm using my team credentials, which are already saved for me, so I'll log in. Okay, and there we have a slightly different view, but the exact same data. Get a drink here. All right, so now the blue stuff is stuff I can't edit because remember we created a view that said I can't edit that. The red stuff is stuff I can edit, and there's no edit button here. If I want to edit something, I just click on this and I edit it. That one thing right there. So in the team editor, I don't do a row at a time. I just do a value at a time. If there's something I want to change, I click on it and I make the change, and that's it. And so the nice thing about this is that every edit is very granular. When I make the edit here on the team editor, it immediately goes back to the Copy Monster database and gets saved. Now, if there was more than one person using this team editor and I made some change, they would actually see that change as well. So to demonstrate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this exact same URL that we're using here, and I'm going to bring up a separate browser. This time I'll use Internet Explorer. I'll put in that URL. And this time I'm going to log in with Pam Purchasing. So I'll put in purchasing and that password I gave her. Okay, so now I'm logged in as Pam Purchasing. And if Pam goes in here and makes a change to this, you'll notice that the value was updated here immediately, and it said down here that Pam Purchasing updated unit price. So whenever one of the team members is making an edit, the value gets saved in the database and rebroadcast to anybody else who's out looking at the same data. The basic concept is that people can work on this data collaboratively. So, different teams can be using different views so that they're working on different columns. But even people who are working on the same columns can work together without stepping on each other because they can work on one value at a time, and what they're seeing on their screen is the latest and greatest data. They can also just send some, they can also just use this to communicate with one another. So, hi Paul, I fixed it. And you see the message came up over here for me. So there's a communication channel to anybody in the team who's working on this data at the same time. So this is our concurrent team editor. Now it also does some nice filtering operations. So if the team member needs to, find the data that they're looking for. So let's just say we're looking for a product category of notebook. So we'll just start typing in notebook, and it'll bring it back a restricted list of things that have notebook in it. Or suppose we're looking for product description that contains the words, mouse, M-O-U-S. So you can see that the filtering is working pretty fast. And what's cool about this is not JavaScript happening on the client. I didn't have to transmit the entire data set down to the client. All of this filtering is being done by the server, by the CopyMonster server, which has a very efficient querying mechanism on the Elastic database. So these don't require anything more than an inexpensive tablet or an inexpensive PC. It doesn't require much processing power on the client whatsoever. It just needs a browser to display these results. And you're good to go. All right, so that's the team editor. And let me see, what do I want to show next here? Next, I would like to show the rules in operation here. So the validation rules are kind of a big thing. I'll just go ahead and close that off for now. And let's go back to our table types. And let's go look at our product table type. And let's start off by looking at the product width. Let's edit this column. So in this case, I want to actually edit the rules. So we're going to put in some validation rules for the product width column. Okay. Now, the validation rules page here has a couple of different things to work with. At the most simple is to just say, well, this data is required. It can't be blank. It has to be something there. If you're trying to match a regular expression, you can put that here. You want to validate that it's a good email, or that it's all numbers or all caps or whatever. You get yourself a regular expression and you can put it in here, and it's pass or fail, valid or not valid. Data must exist in table. This is a real nice validation feature where it kind of works together with a context-sensitive drop-down list, in that you can say whatever this value is, it has to exist in this set of data. And the set of data is defined as all the unique values that exist in some column in some table. So you put in the name of a CopyMonster table and the name of a column, and it'll pull out the unique values, and that'll be the set that it has to exist in. You can also have a filter though. So that set can be different, can be filtered for each row. So for example, the filter might say where state equals the actual state that's been entered into this row, and that would make sure that the set of things that comes out is just cities within that state, for example. So the set inclusion is a really nice validation tool. Beyond that, though, we have to go in and create custom validation rules. So to do that, first I'm going to give it a name. So in this case, what I'd like to say is that I'm going to create a rule where the width has got to be greater than the height. And this is just for demonstration, but imagine that the shipping guys want the box to always be wider than tall, so they don't fall over. They don't want things tipping over, so they want a wider base than the height. Width has always got to be greater than the height. So we'll add that rule. Now, to make that rule work, we're going to go ahead and edit it here. And the first thing we're going to do is say, well, what should be the message that gets displayed if this rule gets broken? So if it does, we're going to say that the width must be greater than the height. That's basically the business rule here that we're trying to enforce. Okay, so we'll save that. So if this rule gets broken, we'll display this message. Now to test this rule, we're going to add a new condition, all right? So in this case, we're going to say the product width, we're going to edit this condition. So the product width, if it is less than the product height, okay, so I can add, and I could have more things here, you know, times 10 or whatever. I could have other mathematical operations in this expression, but that's all I need right now. Okay, so if the product width is less than the product height, well, that's invalid. That's a problem. Display this message. So that's really all we needed to do. We'll just go ahead and save these rules. And now we see that we have the rules here that it's required and the width must be greater than the height. I'll go back and I'll look at the table again. Go back to SAP Note products. There we go. Let's go to shipping. And now we can turn on our validate button. Oh, and there we go. We found a bad value that needs to be fixed. And if we hover over that, we have the signal that the width must be greater than the height. Now to fix this, all I got to do is edit it. And I'll change this to, I'll just swap these values. I'll change this to a 10. Change this to 17. And that's it. The validation message is gone. And the question is, you know, are there any more problems? Well, I don't know, but I don't really want to have to go hunting for them. So do me a favor and just hide the valid rows and show me the bad ones. So yes, indeed, there's quite a few that I need to work on here. And I could just go through and start fixing these. And it's going to be the same thing with the team editor, because that's who's probably going to really be working on this. You'll pass this off to one of your team members, and they need to find the data that needs to be fixed. So we'll just say, well, you know, hide the valid rows, and now they can start fixing it. So all they have to do is go ahead and change this to an 11. Well, let's see. If I change this to an 18 and change this to an 11, there you go. And so you see it's no longer invalid as soon as I got it straightened out. And I can go through and fix all of this. Now, as the data steward administrator here, you'd like to keep track of how many of these types of validation errors there are. So we have something called a validation report, which all I need to do is just click on that. And what's happening is in the background, Copy Monster is checking every single row in the table. You're not having to scroll through it or look at it. It's validating every row in this table for you and generating the report. And that report can be usually done in just a few moments, and we can access it from the validation reports screen here. And here we see we can choose a folder and a table and look at the reports. And we see here's the report that we just generated. Yep, you have 33 invalid rows that have this problem of the width must be greater than the height. So all of your validation errors would be shown here, and all of your invalid rows would be shown here. And of course, your goal is to always work this down to being 0 invalid rows. The data is perfect then. Okay, so another thing we can look at here on the status is the edits we were making. If we look at edit logs, here we can see the edits that were made in the last day for the SAP products table. And you can see that I made some edits, Pam made some edits, and we can see the row key. So this is when we imported that SAP metadata and we created the table types, it identified the primary key of each row. Well, this is the primary key, so we could actually search for that and find that exact row that was edited by myself at this time. And this is the column that I changed. This is what the value was before, and this is what it was after. So this audit log here edit log keeps an audit trail of everything I've done. And finally, if I look at the dashboard, which is where we started, we can see that through this activity we've done here, we've created 25 types when we imported that SAP metadata. We have 4 different views now, 2 copiers, 2 folders, 2 team members, 2 tables, 3,300 cells in those tables, and this is how much storage we're using. Team contributions, you can see that this is going back over the past few days. So this lets you kind of see, how much work your team is doing, how many edits they're making per day. So this is the total accumulation of all team members on that day. And then the last row here is the number of invalid rows. So this is the value of invalid rows from all tables from the last generated report on that day. So whenever you're generating reports each day to see how your data is improving, you'll get a count here. So you can imagine that, when you start off with new data, there's many invalid rows, then the team is working and there's less invalid rows, and the team is working and there's less. So team works and they drive this number down to 0, invalid rows to 0. That's what you'd like to see the trajectory be here on your dashboard. And that's pretty much it for this demo, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit through it all. We have 2 more demos coming up after this. One is for the Excel Gateway, and the other one is for a demo of how to set up reference data inside of CopyMonster. But by now, hopefully you have an idea of some of the basic concepts and some of the basic capabilities that CopyMonster offers. And if you have any further questions, please reach out to me. You can find me at paul@crystalworks.com or through LinkedIn or through Facebook. So I very much appreciate you watching this, and have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.